The first being was so ingenious and creative. Between the first being and their first child, they started a language. They would hum to each other. It was a language of humming and emphasis on sounds that they would make, like They had a certain level of telepathy with their eyes. They could just see each other and know what each other was feeling. Oftentimes there was no need to communicate. Imagine a world where someone knows how you feel without having to communicate. This first progenitive gene, this first progenitor, and their predecessors would grow and grow and grow. They never stopped growing. Their growth depended on how much they learned, to how much they ate, to how much they rested, to how much they exercised. And this being did not need to eat. This was at a time when, as time went on, they just grew, and they did not stop growing, not even when they were literally on their death throne. It was as if Source itself was experimenting with them, figuring out itself through them, figuring out itself through them. The first being ended up being over 700 feet tall. Their predecessors grew to 600, and their predecessor and their predecessors grew to 400, and their predecessors grew to 300. And as more and more of them populated the earth, they begot smaller and smaller and smaller. And as they aged, they grew hair on their faces, much like how women do after the age of 25. Every woman gets some hair on her face. Every female, every woman, she gets hair, whether it's a mustache, whether it's her sideburns, whether it's underneath her chin, whether it is her chin. Every woman grows or sprouts a little hair at some point on her face. And it's no different from these womb beings. As they grew in age, past 100, past 200, past 300 years, they would grow beards. They would grow beards. And it would only make sense that if males come from females, just like we are in the womb, first female, the womb replicates the art of life. Men don't specifically grow beards because they're males. Males have been conditioned and bred to grow beards. It's in their haplogroup now. Beards and facial hair is something that came from the first being. We all share attributes from the first being. Even the homunculi, even the ones faceted from dead flesh, they still derive from the first being. As they grew in age, they would grow facial hair. They would largely look like men after a certain point in age, if they did not try to make themselves into something more neotenous. These womb beings that were giants and melanated were first neotenous looking when they were born, as we all are, until they grew in age and they looked very much paternal, very much fatherly. They would grow facial hair. And at the time of the first, facial hair was a signification of wisdom. How the first womb beings honored their dead. They would make thrones for them. These melanated womb being giants would sit on thrones when it was their time to go. And they would sit on their thrones for decades, or what felt like decades. Time was a little different back then. Until they would formally die and become petrified in stone. Until then, oftentimes, as these melanated womb beings that were giants would rest until death, sitting on their thrones, they would get to meet their incarnations as they were between realms, and as the veil got so thin, as they were peacefully slipping away. Sometimes these womb beings that were giants and melanated got to see their next incarnations. They got to see themselves sometimes. Imagine seeing yourself being born again. That would happen sometimes. These womb beings would get so old and so wise, and that their children's children's children would get to see the progenitor. And of those children, one of those children was the incarnation of the progenitor, and the progenitor, the first melanated womb being who was a giant, what I would call the avatar of Gaia, got to see themselves. You see, the world has intentionally become so inverted and subverted so that the truth, the gnosis truth, this Gnosticism that I'm bringing to you would seem like a lie. But then I ask you, study Neanderthal DNA. Study where men come from. Study the womb and how babies are born and how we're all female first. Look at the Gnosticism of the sun and the planets, the heavenly bodies, and what the Bible says, and realize that the Bible was written by men who wanted to control the earth. Try to understand that this perversion of the earth is deliberate, so that when the truth really does come out, it's deliberate so that, and whoever says the truth would be questioned